Hello and welcome to the short vort on Parshas Bamidbar. We start a new Seder, and of course we discuss the Degalim in here. However, I will discuss something from an essay from Jonathan Sachs. In English, they translate the new book Bamidbar as numbers, and the reason for that is because there's a census at the beginning and an account at the end of the book. But according to Jewish tradition, we define it as Midbar, as the wilderness, suggesting a different theme. And the superficial reason why we use Bamidbar is because it's the first key word of the Sefer. However, Rabbi Sachs, based on the works of two anthropologists, Arnold van Gennep and Victor Turner, suggest that there's a possible different understanding of what went on and the significance of the Jewish period in the desert. He considered it as a formative experience where Torah had a revolutionary idea, namely an ideal society is one which everyone has equal dignity under the sovereignty of God. So Arnold van Gennep, the anthropologist, just says that society has different rituals to mark periods of transition from one state to the next. For example, from childhood to adulthood, or from single to being married. And each one of these transitions has three stages. The first stage is leaving the former identity. The third stage is entering into the new identity. And then there's an in-between stage, a transition period, where you're saying goodbye to who you were, but you're not yet ready to say hello to who you're about to become, as you are reborn or refashioned, as it may be called. Van Gennep calls this concept using liminal, from the Latin word threshold, to describe that second state, kind of a no man's land between the old and the new. And he says that this is clearly what the wilderness signifies for Israel, the liminal space between leaving Egypt and entering into the promised land. No longer a group of escaping slaves, but they're now a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The desert is a place where Yaakov Avinu's descendants, alone with God, cast off one identity so that they'll be able to assume another. And with this, we can understand one of the stories in the details in Sefer Shemos, the daubing of the doorpost with blood, talking about the Pesach period. That is in part of the first stage, which is a separation during which the time the door through which you walk, you leave your old life behind and they begin a new life that has a symbolic significance. Victor Turner added another element to this analysis. He drew the distinction between society and what he calls communitas. Society always has different structure, different hierarchy, leaders, powerful, weak, and followers. So he says that there's in a liminal space that we just learned about, you can have a transformative period in the desert where there are no hierarchies. Instead, there's an intense comradeship, and egalitarianism, none of that secular rank ideas there. So that's communitas is a unique and rare stage, and it's only a very brief period, but it can be very memorable when everyone is equal. So now let's go back to the Midbar. So in regarding the Midbar in the wilderness and the spiritual life of the Bnei Yisrael, it was a place where they experienced intensity that they never felt before and would not easily be able to follow again with an unmediated closeness to God, which connected them to Him and to one another. So now we can understand the significance of the beginning of Bamidbar, in which the 12 tribes are encamped around the Mishkan. There's 4 different sides with 3 tribes each around the Mishkan, and therefore they're equidistant from the holy. So they're the same. Even though each tribe is different, they're all equal except for Levi, which has a separate status, but they ate the same food. They still had the mun. They had the same drink, whether it's from the rock or the well. They didn't have their own land or property to create conflict and jealousy. It's a special period. So the entire description of the camp in the Bamidbar is emphasizing equality, and it's the ideal state of people only experience in liminal space. That's that communitas, when they just left Egypt, but they've not reached their future destination in Eretz Yisrael. So they haven't begun building the society which will lead to inequality, the leaders and the wealth, etc. So Rabbi Sachs says the poignancy of the book of Bamidbar is that the community has to last so briefly, and eventually it's going to be shattered with strife and quarreling, and then end up costing this generation their chance of entering Eretz Yisrael. So, in conclusion, the wilderness is not just a place, but it's a state of being, the moment of solidarity midway between enslavement and the social inequalities that would come out when they're in Eretz Yisrael. An ideal period never to be forgotten, even if never fully captured again in real space and time. So Judaism never forgot its natural and social harmony. It's something we can possibly get back to if we heed the words of Hashem. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe.